Hello, welcome back. This is part 4 of our introduction to Master of Orion, to the old school game from the late 90s. So we'd left off, I had one errata correction. I had stumbled and fumbled around trying to explain mutually exclusive items such as ship defense minus 20 means you can't also take ship defense plus 25. And what it is it ever so slightly changes this graphic here so that this one is slightly differently shaded. It's odd to me as a graphic artist, you would make that more apparent, but that is what it's doing. And obviously, when you toggle one, it toggles off the other. But there is a graphical difference. It's just super obscure. Oh, yeah. I'll stop talking about it now forever. We had left off with governments. So we'd covered the big 5 trait picks, which are population, farming, industry, science, money. It's kind of what the game is made around. Secondarily, we talked about ship defense, ship attack, ground combat, and spying, and particularly pointing out that ground combat's probably the least important of the things on the screen, to be really quite blunt. If you gotta, if they're landing Marines on your planet, something has gone horribly wrong already. Okay. Ship attack's pretty big. Spying is pretty important unless you have ways to mitigate it. So don't fiddle with those too much. But yeah, let's get into governments. And then I think for this episode, we'll do a quick rundown on these. But I'm going to make short videos on these just for fun. I like to make shorts. It's so shorts are weird with kids, and they do the TikTok thing, and it's always like people just starting right into a conversation as though you've already been like talking about it for 5 minutes, and they're just like all blah 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 blah, and then you got to do a dance routine. You're all doing this, and there's some cool music that you don't have the rights to, but you're playing it anyway because who cares? I don't exactly do that. I think of shorts as a simple way to quickly give people information about a topic. What is lost on me is how people are supposed to access my shorts when they're in a jumble of thousands of other unrelated shorts. But you know what? I don't need to understand it. I'm just going to make the shorts because that's what I like to do. Here we go, though. Let's jump back into governments. This is pretty big. You've got 4 styles. You must choose one of these, FYI. Whereas everything else, like you can have nothing selected on ground combat. What it means is you are taking a ground combat option. You're taking the average option. You're taking nothing, no minus, no positive. You're just taking the base level. That's true for all of these. However, with government, functionally, dictatorship is your base level. It's your it's your middle option. 0 points. That's why it's 0. So it's just hidden on all these others. They could have put a 0 button in here. They're just saving space. This is by default. Okay, so let's jump to feudalism first. This is the only one that's a negative. Why? Why is feudalism? Feudal governments are ruled by powerful families similar to medieval Europe. Due to the fragmented and warlike nature of these governments, they receive certain benefits and penalties. So the big thing is ship costs are reduced by 1/3. That means building ships, manufacturing them in the first place. So this can be upgraded later on in the game to a higher level of feudal government, and that ship cost is reduced to 2/3, meaning they are nearly giving you away ships for free. You can build a very massive navy this way. It's hard to survive long enough to get to that point, but this would be if you want to be on the war path. You take feudalism. Here's some detriments, though. Planets suffer a minus 20 morale penalty unless they have marine or armor barracks. That's actually the same. That's actually true for dictatorships. So in that sense, that's more of a common one. Although it's not true for democracy or unification, as you'll see. But it's one more building you have to build. Morale, let's just talk about morale real quick while we're on the topic, because it's actually a huge thing in the game that isn't usually apparent to people right off the start. It's actually easily as important as population, farming, industry, science, or money because it affects all of them. When you have a minus 20% morale penalty, it is minus 20% to the production of everything else. Maybe not population growth, but I know farming, industry, science, and money, yeah, it's a hit to your whole economy, to everything you produce. So be careful with that. You can mitigate it by simply building a marine barracks, but it's just one more building. You got to take the time to build on each planet and maintain. We're getting in depth. Here we go. Let's keep going. Feudal governments have all research generated by scientists reduced by 50%. It's not so good. Now, it is saying specifically by scientists, so I don't think that 50% reduction comes off of science generated by buildings. At least the way it's worded. To be quite blunt, I've never dug in deep enough. You'd probably have to go on some like wiki or something to find the person who knows Mu 2 well enough to know whether that applies to science generated by the buildings you make or only by your pop scientists. You see how there's a difference? You have your science. For all these, you have farming, you have food, industry, science, and money generated by population and generated by buildings. Well, not by, you don't generate money by population, but you generate farming, industry, and science by population. So if a farmer is going to get a bonus, then that's on what the farmer's making. But then you also may have a hydroponics lab, which works and makes food whether or not you have any population working in the hydroponics lab. It just automatically makes food. So the question is would you get a bonus to that as well? It's a building making the product as opposed to populations. That's true for industry and for science. So in this case, it's saying, hey, your scientists get a 50% reduction. That's a big hit, especially early on in the game. As with any of these things, they can be mitigated, these detriments, as you survive far enough into the game. You get so much technology, so many buildings, that it really helps assist your production of all of these things, if you live long enough. Feudal governments assimilate captured population at a rate of 1 population every 8 turns. So that's not that really big of a deal, but it's just saying, yeah, if you conquer a planet with 10 pops, it's going to take 80 turns to convert all those pops. 8 turns per pop. Yeah, and that's essentially functionally 8 years. 80 turns would be 8 years in the game as it goes, which is a pretty long time in this game. Feudal populations instantly assimilate when conquered by any other race. There are always local barons looking out for themselves. That is a detriment. That is not a bonus. That means anytime your planet's conquered, everyone immediately flips over to the other side. The reality is that in this game, you're not really trading planets back and forth via conquest that often. So I don't want to pretend that it's that big of a detriment. But yeah, so long story short, feudalism, the big bonus is that your ship costs are reduced. The big negative is that your science is reduced. And it's overall a negative. It's not a good form of government. Here we go, dictatorship. Let's keep an eye on my time down here. In this form of government, one being has absolute power. All orders and decisions made are final, and the general population is ruled with an iron hand. This control confers several benefits and disadvantages to dictatorships. Again, remember, this is the default. Defensive agents receives a +10 bonus due to increased internal security. So all of your spies are either spies in the field and other planets, or the defensive agents, they're called agents when they're defending on your home planet, in your home systems, protecting you from being spied upon. So this bonus only applies to your defenders because you have such a tight community. Think authoritarian, kind of, like V for Vendetta style, thought police. Yeah, you're the thought police people. Cool. Planet suffers a -20 morale penalty unless they have a marine or armor barracks. That's similar to what we talked about with feudalism. And finally, dictatorships assimilate captured population at a rate of 1 pop every 8 turns. So that's it. The only benefit there is your defensive spy bonus. But it's worth 0 points. Here we go. Democracy. This is one of the better ones. The people elect representatives to run the government. No single body of people directly controls the government, and the personal freedoms are greatest of all forms of government. So here's a detriment. This is a bad thing about democracy. Defensive agents are penalized -10 due to the emphasis on personal freedoms. That's right. Your government, your agents who are defending your empire can't spy on its own people as well. Therefore, it's a disadvantage. Here's some benefits, though. Democracies assimilate captured populations at a rate of 1 pop every 4 turns. It's the fastest rate of assimilation outside of being a telepathic empire where you can instantly assimilate an entire planet. We'll get to that. That's one of my favorite things in this game. Okay, so that's really good. That means people want to join you very quickly. Due to the free exchange of ideas, all research generated by scientists is increased by +50%. Again, I think that applies to your scientist pops, not to the science generated by your technological buildings. Yeah? Okay. Here's another benefit. The government's concern with promoting trade increases all tax revenue by 50%. Now, as I said before, there are no tax populations. All taxation comes from, or all money, BC generation, comes from your tax base or your buildings that generate BC like spaceports, stuff like that, galactic stock exchanges. But it says all tax revenues. Does that mean just your tax slider bar? Or does it mean your tax slider bar in your buildings? I think it means everything. So it's a good bonus. It means you got a lot more money. Capitalism. Yeah, it's a democratic capitalistic society is what this is. And finally, democracies are prohibited from annihilating captured populations. Phooey. I want to exterminate everyone. No. There's ways around that. You can crack a planet completely. You can bombard a planet from space before you land your Marines and just annihilate everything on it. But once you land on the planet, if there's any population left alive, they're now your responsibility. You may not exterminate them. I would never recommend exterminating population unless you're trying to go for a psychopathic xenophobe roleplay scenario where you're just like, there can only be my type of people in the galaxy. Maybe you want to roleplay that, but ultimately you want pops. It's the most valuable resource in the game, so the more pops you can get, the better. You want to capture them when possible. But yeah, that's a pretty good one. My nose is so itchy. I don't want to sneeze on camera. Oh my gosh. Okay. And then finally, fourth form of government, unification. Only a few races are genetically capable of forming a unified government. The population exists harmoniously without jealousy, envy, or concern for individual advancement. Wow, sounds fantastic. Hold on. Each individual works for the improvement of the whole instead of the desire for the individual. The unified government is the social equivalent of a colony of bees. It's like the insectoid or the mind hive. They could even be humanoid, but they could be like, say, you could imagine they're in a Gaia situation, sort of like Pandora from the Avatar movies from James Cameron, not Avatar The Last Airbender, which is a far superior project when we're talking about the cartoon. Yeah. Defensive agents receive a plus 15 bonus due to lack of traitors. That's right. If you're not in the system, you ain't in the system. If you're not one of us, you aren't one of us. So plus 15 is a massive defensive bonus again, not offensive. All moral effects in any building's modifying morale are ignored by unification governments. Yeah, this is a detriment. Early on, it's a positive. It's a little confusing, and this is what we're talking about. When you first start the game, if you were going to be a dictatorship or feudal government, all your colonies off your main capital, your homeworld, will be at a minus 20%, as we talked about on everything. That's a big chunk. You can overcome it with a marine barracks. Pretty simple building. You can build one right off the bat, actually. It's one of the first things you can build. So you can rectify that issue with a bit of work and labor, bit of upkeep. But with these guys, you don't need that. Every colony you make, whether it's on your homeworld or not, is treated with zero morale benefit or detriment. So to start off the game, this is actually useful. However, as the game progresses and you gain things like hollow simulators and pleasure domes and all this other stuff that boost your planet's morale, you can get the morale bonus on the things you produce as high as maybe 80 or 100%. So I want you to think about that. Towards the later part of the game, all the other systems of government besides unification are going to have, let's just say, an 80% bonus to everything they farm, all their industry, all their science, but your unification government won't have it. There's no way to offset that unless you've already effectively won the game before you get to late game. Unless you've dominated, unless you have so much of a lead that it won't matter, it's a huge detriment going into the middle to late part of the game. Because I know the first morale bonus is going to be a plus 10%. There's a plus 20% building. There's a plus 60% building. So I guess you're hitting 60% total. It may cap at 60, but I have a feeling there may be one or two other ways to get additional morale, maybe through leaders or something. So I think it could even go above 60%. But your unification government will never benefit. Now, the other side to that is that you'll never have to build those buildings or maintain them. So in that sense, it saves you a bit of money. But you're going to be building 20, 30 buildings on each planet anyway. So what does it matter if you're not building an extra 2 or 3 that would give you huge bonuses? So Be careful with that one. It's complex, and you really have to have your strategy built around this unification if you're going to use it successfully. Okay, let's keep going. Unification governments assimilate captured populations at a rate of one population every 20 turns. That's right. It takes a while for the fungus brain leeches to worm their way into each population person and break their will and make them join your hive mind civilization. You can assimilate, but it is painful and it is slow. It ain't the Borg here, folk. I mean, it's like the Borg, but the Borg do it very effectively and quickly. But these, it's like, no, this takes a long. It takes 2 years to assimilate a single pop into your civilization. Ooh. Increased productivity results in a 50% bonus to all industrial production. You see how that's phrased differently, though? How I pointed out when I was reading over the democracy part about its science per scientist? This doesn't say anything about industrial workers. This says increased productivity results in a 50% bonus to all industrial production from your buildings and your pops. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the notes, but ultimately, or comments, is that what we call, is that what it is on, I've never done YouTube before, sorry, in the comments, not the notes. This is better. This is even better than 50% bonus to science because it's from all sources as far as I'm reading it. Secondly, increased productivity results in a 50% bonus to all food production. Same thing. It's not to all farmers, it's to all of it. So you have a farmer who farms for 2 normally. This will make that farmer farm for 3. You have a hydroponics lab that normally produces 2 free food without a farmer working on it. It now will produce 3. That's how I'm reading it. So those are big. You know what, folks? That is a 16, 17-minute video. I'm going to call it there. It was worth talking about that, though, because this section, since you have to choose one of the 4 no matter what, this was really deserved its own video, and it's probably the single most important choice you can make for your game. I'm going to log off there, and I will make a 5th video quickly summarizing all of these. If you watched, thank you so much, and we will get to gameplay eventually. That will be coming after the introductory series is over. We'll think of something cool to do.